the only way they can hope to get any money or any success out of the years they've put into this is to recruit, which means they have to pretend like they're happy.
Yep.
So it's like the system hinges on this situation where you have to be miserable and unhappy and poor, but pretend like you're happy and successful. Well, so they're telling you you have to live a lie. Well, if there's no difference between sales and life, and your life is sales, then sell yourself the lie and sell others on the lie. And that's fucking crazy.
All right, so for anyone who watches these videos and is a usual subscriber to my channel, they may have known the website Juicy Rhino. We've brought it up in other interviews before. Hilarious memes about the business, or the cult as we call it. And joining us today, making his, I guess, official debut on the Slave Circle Extra Takes, is the man himself from Juicy Rhino. How you doing today, sir?
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be featured on the Slave Circle channel. This was one of the first windows I had into the business, and I know so many others are like that too. And yeah, you're like, I don't know who's the greatest filmmaker of all time. I was just going to compare and say, like, I don't know, you're the Steven Spielberg of documentaries about the business.
About the business. That is a very specific niche, but I'll take it. All right. All right. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to this, because usually when I have interview scheduled, I do the research, and then there's a certain amount of dread going into it, because we're going to talk about so many negative things and negative experiences. And I don't think that'll be an issue today. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. All right, so I know that you talk about this in your Juicy Rhino podcast, but for those who might not have heard it, how did you get started in this, researching this and being interested in this business?
Okay, so when people read the Juicy Rhino meme page and email me, or we're using old man lingo with web page and email, when they DM me on the gram, they're always like, oh, you must have been in the business for a long time, or you must have been an owner or whatever. And that's just not the truth. The truth is I just stumbled across this weird world because my wife had shared a co-work space with one of these companies here where we live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And nobody in the space could figure out what this company did. And then she's like, can you look into this and just see what it is? Because she knows I'm a curious person and I love to do this stuff. So I did. And, every time you try to get a question answered, they just somehow give you 3 more questions. Something as simple as like, oh, well, the company's hiring for a marketing executive. What do you market? Can never find out. So I spent a long time researching it and came across yours, and eventually went in for an interview, which still only led to more and more questions. And so at a certain point, I realized the only way I could explain all the information I was compiling was to make some sort of documentary. And I was really I love audio, I love music and radio and that sort of stuff. So I just want to make a podcast out of it. And obviously yours was a huge source of inspiration, and you appeared on the podcast too.
I did, yes.
You were interviewed for one episode.
Now, long before the podcast, though, came the Juicy Rhino Instagram account, and it's really interesting. I'm not on Instagram myself. Especially in these times, I'm trying to avoid social media as much as possible. But every once in a while, I'll go take a look at the top memes, the newest memes that I can actually see, and look at your followers, and you're up to 1,254 followers. Now, that's not people you're following, that's people that are actually following your page. Now, does that seem kind of amazing to you, considering that you had no involvement in this whatsoever and you just kind of created this page?
Yeah, totally. It's interesting because when I started researching this world, it was just so closed off and so hard to find any information or anybody who'd been through it who would talk to me here. I'm specifically here in my little small town.
Yeah.
But then getting into the meme world and finding out there were so many people, so many of these businesses that I could follow. And then once I followed them, their employees would start to follow me. So yeah, it was really surprising to see how many there were and how big the world is and how they keep following it too. Like, they're always recruiting and they're always finding those people. And what I especially love is the DMs they send me. I love it when they tell me their stories and like I'm sure you get them all the time, emails from people. The really funny ones, the really sad ones. But
so what gave you the idea to do memes specifically?
I had started researching these companies and written about it just for my friends to read, and then I started making a podcast. And then as part of the podcast, because I worked on the podcast for about a year and a half before I put it out. Mm-hmm. So as part of the podcast, I made an Instagram page to just follow a bunch of these businesses. So I gave the name Lucy Rhino because I thought it was a silly name and one that they would read and be like, sure, approve or whatever, But I wasn't really posting anything. But then after I started following a lot of these businesses and seeing how many there were, and seeing how often they regurgitate the same propaganda, the same memes. If you want to propagandize an idea right now, you use memes. That's like how we communicate, and it's a really effective, efficient, interesting way that I have a new appreciation for, having worked on a meme page for a couple years now. But so I would see them recycle the same motivational memes, like "Don't ever give up, don't ever stop. Your friends will think you're crazy. It's okay. Don't talk to your friends." My favorite one of all, which you can probably find on the Juicy Rhino pages that I reposted of theirs, is the shark. If in a fish tank, a great white shark will only grow 6 inches, but if it's in the ocean, it'll be a full-size shark. And that's like you have to shed all your friends. So I was seeing all these ridiculous memes. And so at one point I was just like, I'm going to start posting my own slightly satirical ones. Yeah. And at first they were more positive about the business. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted some of these people to follow my meme page and not immediately identify it as negative content that would neg them out or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then gradually it got more and more satirical and more kind of harsh about realities of life in the business as I was witnessing it through your channel, but through my research here in Chester.
Sure. Yeah, and I do want to break down some of what I heard in your podcast in a little bit, but one of the people that is quoted, I think it was in the last episode of your podcast, talked about becoming kind of a master of the psychology, and I think that was pretty useful for you to use psychology yourself, because you said you created memes first that were more kind of supportive of the business, or something like that, more like you said, more positive. And I think that's kind of how you got more, at least people that were currently in the business, to trust you and reach out to you and maybe share more with you than they normally would have, because it's not like myself, who since day one has been the asshole saying that this is a scam and this is a cult. It's like, maybe not. Maybe this is, I don't know who this guy is, but this might be someone I can trust because he's speaking my language. He seems like he has a shared narrative, right?
Totally, yeah. And the guy you're referencing in that last episode, Chase, he was an owner and he had shared Juicy Rhino with his employees because he was like, "Oh, this is so hilarious, you got to check it out," not realizing that it's negging him out. And what I thought was interesting about the memes and that in that channel too, and the idea of communicating via meme, is that one, it's humor. And I think when people are in the business and they see Devil Corp or the Slave Circle, they're like, "Oh, not listening." But humor disarms people a little bit more, and they're a little more receptive to it. And I don't know, that's we're sharing a laugh, right? There's a little intimacy established there. The other thing about memes that I think is really effective, not that I'm a meme person, like I said, this is all just something I've learned to appreciate being an old man who's not that good with the internet, is that they you come to memes, and that dialogue you have with memes is in your quiet alone time, and they don't get a lot of that. But okay, if you're shitting in the bathroom at Costco and you got 5 minutes and you look at Instagram and your owner isn't talking to you, nobody's on the phone with you, the computer isn't tracking you, there's no customers you have to turn and burn, those quiet moments are few and far between, but memes can enter into those moments. And so I think that was an effective way for them to communicate with people.
Yeah. And it's really brilliant too, because I remember when I was in the business, they would always talk about maintaining your attitude, or if you lose your attitude, how quickly can you get your attitude back? And, we go through all these different ways to do it. Listen to your favorite song. Here's how I date myself. Vines were the big thing back then. So, watch some Vines, or talk to somebody who's not going to neg you out. Talk to someone who's going to inspire you, or something like that. And so, yeah, I mean, culturally now in 2020, 2021, we are a meme society. There are memes everywhere. Anybody can become a meme, so, and it's like you said, it's a great way to communicate. And what were my Vines back then are now the memes. Look at meme pages. I'm sure they're saying that in the offices today. So yeah, I mean, if you can find a meme page that has a little bit to do with, well, this is kind of weird, this guy is using terminology and this sort of thing, and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, we're talking about critical things here. Well, maybe I need to look a little bit further into this, and it was a brilliant idea. Now, after the success of the Instagram page, after a while, like you said, you had been working on the Juicy Rhino podcast. That came out, and I've listened to all episodes. There's only 7 of them, but they're all fantastic. And it's not just because there's a lot of similarities in the research that I've done in the past few years, but it really is truly excellently researched. Now, I know you come from Chattanooga, which, I mean, it's not a small town, but it's not a big city either.
Yeah.
And for a place like Chattanooga, I found it interesting that in a relatively small market, you had so much activity in this industry. When I was in the business, I was in the Chicago area, and I can't imagine how many businesses are in Chicago right now. I mean, dozens, if not probably 2-3 dozen of them, if not more. But you were able to do something that I long suspected was possible. You confirmed it. You created a fake persona with a fake resume with a bunch of absolutely BS qualifications, and was able to get an interview. And I think you said it took less than 10 minutes, right? When you got the email back?
I can't remember exactly. It's
Okay.
in the podcast. It's been so long, but your probably memory, if you listened to it recently, is better than mine.
Yeah.
It's been a little while since I put it out there, but holy cow. Yeah, no, it was like that night, very shortly after I got a reply, and it was coming the next day for an interview. It is funny as shit to me. He was spent 10 years as the guy I'm referencing, the fictitious me, Dale Vanderberg, spent 10 years as a Chuck E. Cheese, in the Chuck E. Cheese costume at the pizza place, and then was a medical guinea pig, and was president of the campus Dutch Oven Society, which is when you fart under a blanket. So clearly either a joke or the least qualified person imaginable, but he was the CEO of the company. He was like, come in for an interview. You got what it takes. And then, boy, for 40 minutes, he kept, hitting me with the sales pitch. And I kept asking questions because I already knew what it was. But yeah, I just kind of oh yeah, and what's this? And how does this work? And how does this work? Until finally, after 40 minutes of it, I'm like, hey, dude, is this a Smart Circle company? And he's like, how do you know about Smart Circle? And I was like, okay, because I've heard this and that, and then he suddenly got defensive, and all of a sudden we couldn't talk about it at all. Then it was get out of the office. And he said, if you ever get an opportunity like this again, just don't mention the name Smart Circle if you want to be smart. I was like, okay, sure. And I was like, well, likewise, if you're trapped in the business, and you miss your family and you're sleeping in these flop houses with people moving all around the country and living in poverty, you can call me and I'll talk about it. Cause I love hearing about it. There's a satirical and funny tone to it, but that's one thing I really wanted to point out is hopefully I want to make fun of the business, but not make fun of the owners. You know what I mean? Because they're the victims of this scam. The salespeople have it bad. It sucks. They're overworked. But the people who get roped into years of it and lose, like Chase did, $7,000 opening an office, $7,000 opening this office, or like these other people that I've seen who go and they retrain and like they're in debt to the business. Like they're the victims, man. And like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that a few of the people at the top or whatever know what they're doing and understand this is a law of averages, and I am literally burning through people. But I don't think most of these owners, they don't get that. They really think that they are giving people the greatest opportunity, and they're in a slow process of realization that they didn't get a great opportunity. They got sold a shit deal with a 99.999% failure rate, like in every city.
Yeah, and that's something that I've asked, that I've wondered out loud, just how these owners, like their mental state, like at what point do they realize, because they've reached ownership, they've reached that plateau of what they've been working toward for a year or more, they have to give off this impression that they're successful and they're making money, but they're not making money. They're living, like you said, probably with 4 or 5 other people in these horrible apartments and living on the living room floor or the couch or whatever. Like, how do they justify that to themselves? I'm sure they're being, if they bring up questions like that, they're being fed the brainwashings and the lies from the regional and national consultants. And it just makes me more thankful than ever that I didn't make ownership, and it was interesting. I've told this to a lot of people. At the time, I was really disappointed that I didn't make it, that I burnt out. But after almost 5 years of research now, I'm thinking, wow, I am so happy that I did burn out and that I didn't get any further than I actually did.
Yeah, man. It's really diabolical, and the super diabolical thing, like you touched upon, and I get to this at the end of the podcast, is like, so it's this system that like puts people, the vast majority of people, in poverty. They're living in group homes, they're stranded, they're away from their family, they don't have the way to get home, they don't have a car in some cases, they're malnourished because they're eating Costco hot dogs all day. But the only way they can hope to get any money or any success out of the years they've put into this is to recruit, which means they have to pretend like they're happy.
Yep.
So it's like the system hinges on this situation where you have to be miserable and unhappy and poor, but pretend like you're happy and successful. Well, so they're telling you have to live a lie. Well, if there's no difference between sales and life, and your life is sales, then sell yourself the lie. Yeah. And sell others on the lie. And that's fucking crazy. Now, if they would just come out and say that in the job interviews or the job ads, you know what I mean? If they're not like, be a marketing exec, if they're like, here's the deal, live in poverty in group homes for 5 years, eat Costco hot dogs, convince yourself that you're really happy. And if you can convince not just like 5 people to open office, because most of them are going to fail, if you can convince 50 other people to do this for years and invest thousands of dollars doing it, then maybe you'll get some money. But they don't say that in the ad. That's what's really, I don't know. There's so many deceptive things about it. If they would just be honest about it in the ad, if they would just be honest about it in the interview, okay, that's what the system is. That's what the failure rate is. You know what? In Chattanooga, we had 9 of these businesses last year.
Yeah.
9 of them failed. Before you're all in on this, at least be aware of that little statistic,
Mm-hmm. And I think that those 2 words, convince yourself, are so incredibly important, because every long once in a while I'll just kind of look at some of the recent comments on the YouTube, the Slave Circle videos, any of them honestly, and I'll get the stray comment from the person who says, oh, this is a great opportunity, I'm making however many thousands of dollars. And part of me is like, okay, well, number one, if you are, congratulations. And I wonder how long that's going to last, because it's not going to last long. And number 2, is this real, or have you just convinced yourself that it is reality? And we're seeing a lot of examples of that in our culture today, of people convincing themselves of a certain reality that does not exist. But yeah, it's there's a lot of power in psychological manipulation. Now, you talked in one of your episodes about the internal, I think it was Credico magazine, and these articles and these photos that they have of these people, celebrating them. And I couldn't help but think, when I was listening to that sounds an awful lot. I don't know if you've ever seen these very highly polished Scientology videos with like the
Yeah.
bright colors and the special effects and everything like that. And the whole purpose of those videos is to paint everything a certain way. Again, that is not at all based in reality. You watch a Scientology video and they say they're the fastest growing religion in the world and they have all these millions of people, but they're actually being supported by like maybe 20,000 people who are forced to give all of their money to this cult. So, and I know, for years I've been calling this organization a cult. Based on the people you've talked to and your experiences, would you agree that this is more of a cult than a legitimate business operation?
You know what? That to me is what was the most tantalizing question about this topic that you pose all the time, and that's what I wanted to find out in doing all my research for my podcast and talking to people on the memes. And like, you know what? It's a really hard question for people to answer because like there's no like scientific. There's no way like you quantify something, you measure it, and you've got enough cult powder in the substance, you're technically a cult now. You know what I mean? So it's a very subjective definition, but like with the bite model, with the behavior control and thought and information and emotion control, all those things really seem to apply. And one tricky thing about it is, okay, so like, I'm sure you understand when you do the slave circle, you can talk to everybody around the world. You can get a million stories. You can get a million people who say it's terrible, a million people, but whatever. That's why I decided to focus on just Chattanooga, my small town. Because I feel like, okay, if I just focus on my small town, I can definitively say at least what's going on in this little small pool if I follow it, and like part of the problem is, so like if between these 9 companies that they had, they employ, 100 people or whatever, most of them don't even know what they dealt with. They don't even know the hugeness of this pyramid shaped business model and like how long it's been going and how many times it's changed its name. Right. So it's hard for them to assess whether or not it's a cult because they don't even know what it was they were involved in. They were kind of casually involved in it for a little while, And so like, a lot of the owners that I spoke to, I keep looking over here because I had my list of all the companies.
That's all right.
Anyway, they're still in the middle of it, right? So they're not going to talk to me. And if they talk to me, all they're going to say is the business is amazing. Anybody is crazy who doesn't believe what we believe, right? So I can't really get a good opinion. And then right after they leave, the last thing they want to do is talk to a stranger. They need time to decompress. They need time to put it in perspective. So like and then once they do get to that place where they feel like, okay, I have enough distance from what I went through to like make a call as to whether or not this is a cult, they're not going to want to necessarily talk about it. Certainly not with an outsider. You know what I mean? So it's hard to find a pool of people to say definitively, is it or is it not? And in the podcast, I mean, I talked to you. You clearly think it is. One of the other experts on the topic. There aren't a lot of people who get to say they're an expert on topic. You get to, but Luke St. Germain, who I don't know if you've read the book Ringing the Bell, but it's awesome. It's hilarious and dark and sad and twisted, like every story of life in the business. And and when I ask him in my podcast, he's the same thing. He's like, when I got out of it, I would have said no. Or when I was in it, I would have said no. But now that it's been a few years, I guess it has to be, just because it was the hardest thing I could ever do in my life to get out of it. And that shouldn't be true of the job of selling cable TV in Costco. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And just the word, the phrase getting out, that's a phrase people use from Scientology, getting out of Scientology, getting out of the Jehovah's Witnesses, but getting out of a job.
Of a really shitty job.
There's something wrong there.
It's like the equivalent of like working, at Burger King and like fucking spending 10 years working 80 hours a week and traveling on your own dime around the country. Yeah. Like, God, I don't know. Should I leave Burger King? It's the hardest thing I can do. But that's what makes me think, okay, it's got to be a cult. Yeah. The last guy I talked to in my podcast is Chase, who was an owner for 3.5 years. He was recruited out of Chattanooga. If you haven't heard the podcast, it's a crazy story. He was recruited out of Chattanooga, my hometown, and sent to South Dakota and spent a few years there where he was quote unquote very successful, but also, driven to poverty and isolation and depression also. In his opinion, he's like, is it a cult like the 7 Tribes thing that has a deli here in Chattanooga? He's like, it's not that kind of cult, but it's cult-like. But also, he had just left the business a few months ago, and like after a few years looking back on it, he might be like, you know, maybe that is more of a cult. So I don't know. Everybody, I wasn't in it. I can't say if it's a cult or not, but that's the results of my research.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's interesting how an outsider, being an outsider, can adjust your perspective a little bit. Because like I was in it, and I of course when I was in it, I wouldn't have referred to it as a cult because that wouldn't make any sense. But and probably right when I got out, I don't think I started thinking of it as a cult until I really got into Robert Fitzpatrick's research on the Pyramid Scheme Alert website, and of course Steve Hassan's bite model, like you mentioned. And when I started looking at all of the elements of the bite model and thinking, whoa, there's a lot of these that are being practiced in Smart Circle, that can't be coincidental. And I think that's kind of where my whole as well as my huge interest in Scientology and like Leah Remini's work. I'm a huge fan of that. You know, that has really, and the connections, you know, I'd watch a new episode of Leah Remini's show and be like, holy crap, this is Smart Circle all over again.
I love Scientology stuff, by the way, too. I used to live in LA, and they have all those Scientology centers, and they have like the museum dedicated to the horrors of psychology.
Yeah.
And they have like the L. Ron Hubbard like Lifetime Adventure Museum. And dude, I would fucking get so blazed and roll down there. And it was awesome. The lady, you get to the end of it, she's like, let me ask you something, young man. Do you like well, I had a bunch of my friends with me too, because whatever, it's an adventure. But it's like, do you like young men? Do you like certificates? Have you ever won a certificate in your life? Oh, yeah, it's great. Are you kidding? A certificate? And she's like, well, watch this. She like curtains part and flips the light on. And there's like a wall of certificates. And then the wall parts. And there's another wall of like awards and certificates for L. Ron Hubbard and his amazing life. And then the wall parts and another one comes out. Anyway, just saying, aside from Smart Circle, I fucking love Scientology stuff too. And like, you should take, when coronavirus is over, vacation to LA. Just go on all those tours. It's a fucking blast. You'll probably edit that out so we can get back to Smart Circle. But.
Well, no, I don't think I am, because it's fantastic. But no, number one, I ever since I've gotten interested in Scientology, I want to go to the horrors of psychology or psychiatry museum just to see how insane it is. And number two, that's a tax exempt organization that we're talking about. How much money they can bring in, and they use it on separating walls and grand certificates and BS like that. Oh my gosh!
Okay,
all right, anyway,
wait. Let me give you one more thing about that museum. You're gonna love this. So, like, I don't know if they've changed it, but this was like 15 years ago. But they had a movie you watch, and it showed 9/11 footage, Twin Towers falling, Osama bin Laden shooting machine guns with terrorists in the desert.
Yeah.
It's like, did you know that 9/11 wasn't actually caused by bin Laden? It was caused by a secret network of his therapist and other therapists of world leaders.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, wow. go back to Smart Circle.
Anyway, you brought up Luc St. Germain a little while ago, and in episode 5 of your podcast, you addressed the charity scam, which I think out of everything I've learned about Smart Circle, Credico, Sidcore, I think this is the one thing that pisses me off the most, because and you know, obviously these charities are legitimate. They have trouble surviving because they survive on donations, right? And sometimes you have to get creative to get donations, so you have to hire out these companies, I guess. Okay, fine. but the numbers you gave, and I made sure I wrote this down because I'm
glad you wrote it down, because I double checked them in that, and I'm sure they change. You know what I mean? Like, office to office, all this stuff will change. You know?
Yeah. So according to Luc St. Germain, he said 5% of the money that they collect goes to the charity, and the raw numbers that I wrote down here from that episode. Special Olympics was one of the charities. Of the $12 million raised, Appco, or Appco Cobra Group, whatever they're known as now, kept $7 million. Special Olympics got $500,000. And they were working for the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, and Appco Cobra kept 85% of the donations.
And just so this all gets sourced, that was a Guardian article. So if you like Google Guardian Appco Special Olympics, you could find it there. And like the numbers change. And so like if I remember correctly from that article and what I mentioned about it in there, it's like, you know, only like 5% went to the charity, half went to, a little more than half went to Appco, and then there were administrative costs that ate up like another like 85% or whatever of what it ends up being. And I'm sure it changes all the time. And one kind of tricky thing about it from what I've heard is that, so like they'll sign people up with a charity donation, sign your credit card up, right? And so like X amount goes to the charity. That's true if you stay enrolled for 3 years. So like the first year, they're going to keep 80%. The second year, they're going to keep 40% or whatever the numbers. I don't know exactly, but, and I think it depends on the campaign. I think it depends on the office. And so I don't want to be quote any incorrect information, but here's the other thing that I think really fucking sucks about that charity scam right now is that like, okay, so it's a shitty time right now in COVID to try to be selling direct TV at Costco, right? So that end of the business is probably not doing very well. I think they're actually out of Costco stores. They're into Target now. Like the charity scam is probably doing pretty well right now because if you've got money right now, you have the impulse to help people. And if somebody hits you up and they're like, hey, do you want to feed the children? Hey, do you know, want to, I don't know, whatever the charities they're recruiting for, but you know, there's a lot of people right now who are like, fuck yeah, I want to feel like I'm doing something. And so I think there's probably a time where there's a lot of those offices that are opening up and doing well. I don't know. I don't have that information, but that's what it would seem like to me.
Yeah. And I was being interviewed not too long ago about this. And I think the best way to approach this is if you do want to donate to one of these charities, you know, go directly to that charity, go to their website, give them a call. And because it's kind of strange, like if you were to encounter one of these people on the streets, and you know, they ask you, do you want to donate or whatever the pitch they use, and you know, I reach in my wallet and I pull out a $20 bill and I'm like, oh yeah, here, and they're like, no, we can't accept cash. That's the weirdest. That would be the weirdest thing to me, you know, because I would think, well, if you're a charity, you're desperate for money, you're desperate for help, you literally just turn down my money because you are representing the charity, but you're in it for your own interests to get this recurring debit transaction so that your company, your cult, can keep, like you said, whatever, 85% of this. So the charity just gets pennies, just gets a pittance after the fact. It's horrifying. And I know that I've featured some of these people in the Slave Circle Extra Takes. I know Molly, they were doing it in the UK. Mady was doing it in San Antonio. But I've gone to Reddit. I've seen this. They're in every major city, I'm sure, doing the charity scams. I just know I've read about Atlanta. I've read about Chicago, Philadelphia. But it's always dangerous. You know, if someone comes up to you asking for a donation, you really need to be careful about it.
Yeah, well, okay, so two things about that. One thing you can do to, I think people could do to protect their communities from this specific scam, the charity one, is you could talk to your city council and make it pass a local law get a local law passed where if you're collecting for a third party group on behalf of a charity, you have to identify yourself as the third party group and not the charity. And a big reason they can get money out of people is because they don't identify themselves as, I'm with, you know, Millennial Solutions Incorporated. They say I'm with the Humane Society, which isn't technically true. And then the information that they give you is really misleading. So that's a thing that any community can do to protect itself. And then once they know that they're not allowed to run that scam in that town, they can't road trip people in, they can't open offices. They're not going to do that. So that's one thing. But two, like how big this is. This came up in the podcast, but if people haven't heard any of that podcast, like, so I'd spent a year researching these companies. I was already like 8 months into the Juicy Rhino thing. And when I started to learn more about the charity scam, and then I realized, holy fucking shit, I had worked for one of these companies too.
Yep.
I worked for one of the charity scam offices in LA probably like 15 years ago. And I didn't realize it was connected to the whole big world of Direct TV and Xfinity and all these other terrible companies. But yeah, I worked for one of those companies. It was like for a week and they wanted me to go in for morning meetings. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'll meet you at the site. And I thought it was really like misleading, the job ad. And then, yeah, somehow I'm standing on a street corner saying, can you sign up to, donation for, I think it was Greenpeace, I'm not sure. And then at one point somebody came up and was like, fuck your crooked industry, man. I'm never giving a penny. I love whales, but fuck you, your crooked company. And I was like, this company, these like 6 losers in this empty like space in Koreatown, like they have that big of a reputation. But then like when I ended up, like most people, not getting paid for any of my time, I was like, oh, I'm out of here. But I didn't realize that was all part of the script, from the moment they got me on the street to when they were like, don't even bother giving this guy a paycheck. Do I look like I'm going to make it to ownership? And I looked even more like a out of control stoner hippie 15 years ago.
So in the podcast, I found it interesting because you go out of your way to confront these people, especially the owners. And their evasiveness is astounding to me. Like it's definitely something that is learned. And
yeah.
You talk about how they are paranoid, they're afraid of answering questions, they're programmed, they're unable to think for themselves. And again, when we line all that up, I can't stop thinking about Scientology, about Jehovah's Witness, about the People's Temple, North Korea, even the Capitol Mob, all of these groups that are unable to think for themselves. And whenever you question their beliefs, like you said, when you brought up Smart Circle in your interview, they get defensive,
totally.
or even combative, because questioning those beliefs, which I'm all about questioning any beliefs. I question my own beliefs, but in their mind, questioning their beliefs is either irrational or disrespectful or even hateful, and it's blind faith, without critical thinking, without questioning. Which is always dangerous. And I think that's just complete, that's evidence right there of being brainwashed, right? If you cannot think for yourself after a certain time, you're brainwashed, right?
They certainly seemed like programmed robots to me. When I look back at that owner that I'd worked for 15 years ago, to the people that I was meeting here in these offices in Chattanooga, every answer seemed scripted and evasive. And when you said, like, I think the word you used was you confronted them, and like, I understand why it seems that way in the context of me trying to get answers and them being incredibly defensive, but like, dude,
I'm not casually went up to him, right?
Like, I'm all stoned. I'm walking over in my Sizzler shirt and my like pineapple shorts, and I'm like, hey, are you Isaac? Or I don't want to use people's names, but like they post them all over the internet. You know what I mean? Yeah. They flood the internet with all this spam about how cool and happy and awesome they are, and you should join them. So like I would go over like that was who I wanted to meet, these celebrity CEOs, and I'm like, hey, are you the CEO of this marketing company I've seen on the internet? And then they're like, what are you talking about? No, who are you? What? And so like. And it's like, yeah, like I say in the podcast, any other fucking business, man. If I walk into the donut shop and I'm like, hey, I saw you guys sell donuts, they wouldn't be like, what are you doing? Why, how did you get donuts? Why are you asking about donuts? So like everything is so super suspicious. So I'd want to talk to the reps in the stores, and it'd be the same thing. It'd be like, why are you asking about Smart Circle? And then like one rep would be like, don't talk to him. To the other rep, be like, don't even look at him.
That's so bizarre. If I'm walking down the street in downtown Bloomington and someone says, hey, you're the Slave Circle guy, I'm not going to be like, I'll be like, hell yeah, you know my stuff. Are you kidding me? That's awesome.
It was fun because I would have my kid with me or my niece.
Yeah, I remember you had in one episode, didn't she? You asked her about Smart Circle, right? Or she wanted to go meet the guy or something like that?
Also, my kid, as punishment, when he would get in trouble, I would be like, all right, you're in trouble. You have to go with dad to learn about Smart Circle companies. And so we're going to go to Mid-Tennessee events, you know what I mean? And we're going to go to Paramount Consulting. And he'd have to like sit in my arms or on my shoulders and have these awkward conversations with these guys. And then we'd be in the Walmart or the Costco, and I'd want to talk to them too, and they'd be along. And my nieces are a little older, and I'd be like, y'all want to see like a really surreal thing? Do you want like here in the middle of the store, a normal, Walmart? Watch this person have this crazy freak out here. All I have to do is be like, go over and say, juice, man. Hope you don't have a retrain. They do that.
in the last episode of your podcast, it's called Answers, which is great because there's a lot of things that I learned, especially in that episode, and I'm at the point where I honestly don't want to learn any more about these companies. I'm done. I'm checked out. But I did learn an awful lot, and I have some notes about some of the things that you talked about in with Chase primarily in the last episode. So first, this concept of hub managers was brought up. This is something I've never heard of before. It sounds like a really sweet gig if you can get it, though. Taking care of an owner's financials and essentially getting paid to do nothing. Can you tell me a little bit more about the hub managers thing?
So, okay, sometimes I hear about these things. People start using the lingo on Juicy Rhino because I've never been in the business. I don't know all of it, Yeah. And so hub manager is a thing I'd heard about before, and then he went into greater detail about it. And apparently, so you open whatever your bank account, your business account, your joint account with the business, and they control that. So like they'll pay all your bills for you, which is pitched like, hey, that's a huge favor. But they're also in charge of all your finances and they control it. So they have the power over it. And you're also paying them like, I think what he say, $65 a week or something to do it.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And the other thing is a lot of these jobs, I think, and I can't confirm, because I mean, obviously in this day and age, you want to be careful about misleading anybody, I can't confirm a lot of it. It seems like a lot of those jobs are filled by people whose spouses work in the business. So it's like they're pumping owners into this pipeline, and then their spouse is being paid to manage their bank account. And another one is their spouse is being paid to do all the social media accounts for them. So like you'll see like every company that gets promoted out of this one office has the exact same shit on their social media every day. Hey, it's National Cupcake Day. Make sure you eat a cupcake in the same font, and it's all being made by that owner's wife. So all those people are having to pay like $65 to that owner's wife potentially a week to post memes, $65 or whatever to like be a hub manager, whatever the fee is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's all these ways that like, you just convince these people to pump their money back into your system.
Yeah. And to go along with that, another thing that was brought up in that episode was like this, almost like a giant conspiracy between, the heads of Smart Circle. We got Mike T, we got Larry Tenenbaum, and all the other big wigs that really, it's synergy essentially is how they refer to it in a mass media setting, is that they promote only their own interests, so that owners have to get this app or owners have to do this, but it's all owned by Smart Circle, right?
Yeah, that's how they're getting, because my thesis is, okay, if they're opening 10 offices in Chattanooga, 9 offices in Chattanooga in a year, 9 of them fail, and they're going to come back and open more, like, they're not incurring any risk, obviously. And It seems like they're probably making money off of these owners. And that's true because the owners are pumping in money via sales and via the sales through the people that they recruit, but also through the internal sales, which are basically like hidden fees. That are assessed to these owners. And I think the way it works, like anything, is just keep hitting them with as many as you think they can stand, because you just want to keep them barely in. You know what I mean? If you think that they could stand another purchase, then like Chase said, he's as an owner, he's barely getting by. And they're like, hey, guess what? We have a great new management system app that you can download. It's like whatever, $50 a week, not much. And you can motivate, keep all your information together. Oh, but it only runs on iPads, not on the Google or the cheaper ones. So you have to get an iPad. But guess what? We got a great deal on all these refurbished iPads, which means I don't know, who knows? That the business bought a bunch of these, and their job is now to resell them to their salespeople. So they're like, so Chase, who's all strapped for cash, is now in a position where he's like, all right, I got to buy like 10 iPads from my boss, but I'm going to be convinced that it's a great deal because they're so much cheaper than if I had to buy an iPad just on the regular market. You know what I mean? And so they just keep socking them with as much of that as they can stand,
It's so bizarre because it's the exact same language that is used, that everybody is trained to use on customers in the stores or door to door. That's the exact same language that is being used on these these poor owners. It's a great deal. It's not much, stress the deal, assume the sale. You have to assume the sale if you're an owner, right? Because if you don't get this app, and you can't run the office well, so you have to purchase it. Oh, well, it's for growth, it's for promotion of my business. And it's really, I mean, from a business point of view, it's brilliant, because Smart Circle just keeps making money off of these owners, right? These business owners, the people that supposedly are in charge of everything. But if not for these apps that are created and owned by Smart Circle or Credico or Sidcore or whoever, you wouldn't even have an office. You wouldn't have clients. You wouldn't have products. You wouldn't have any of this.
But like Chase pointed out in my interview with him, where he's like, I met a salesperson. I'm talking as Chase. Where Chase said he met a salesperson who sold DirecTV or whatever the product was that he was selling in the stores via Smart Circle, but he was selling it independently on his own, and he made way more fucking money doing it. So they're also like convincing you to do their exploitive system that like picks over your business's carcass like fucking vultures on a piece of roadkill, when you could just sell it on your own. Like, it's also fucking crazy and diabolical. They convince you have to go this path where they take all of the money and are in control of it, when you could just be like, I'm going to be a door-to-door DirecTV salesman. Do the same philosophy, a law of averages, stay motivated, stay positive, and just keep all, whatever, $400 for yourself instead of, getting 175.
Yeah. And, it sounds like Smart Circle, Sidcore, Credico, they're essentially in it for the contracts with the clientele, right? DirecTV, Samsung, Apple, Comcast, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon. All of these companies are essentially in cahoots with these MLMs, right? These cults. And I guess what that means is, until these companies, these big tech companies, take a stand and decide, well, we're going to be kind of somewhat more ethical and not allow these third-party organizations to essentially have free labor, human inventory, as Eric Scheibler discusses it, then these companies are just going to continue to propagate, right? As long as they have those contracts.
I don't think, well, okay, so about the contract. So like the idea of the contract that like, in addition to the money that the business skims off each sale, they have a contract. So they're getting paid from both ends of this. And that's discussed in the podcast with Chase. But I also want to say, before I say that, like, everything that he explains in the business from his perspective of being an owner for several years is also just what was explained to him. And like, I don't fucking know if the people above him are lying to him. So like, if they explain the contracts and that's his understanding of it, and he explains in my podcast, it could be that the person above him who explained it was lying. I don't think lie at every fucking level. So who knows? But the explanation he gives me, is that they are making money off a contract with the company for doing all their sales, for being their external outsourced sales company. Now, when you follow up with like, why are these companies allowing it? I don't think they had any fucking clue what happens in these companies, because like, if I actively want to find out. I went to all these companies, talked to all these people in Chattanooga, you and the guy who wrote the book, Luke St. Germain, and like, it's hard for me to find any answers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think they have any understanding. And I think when they get bad press, like a lot of the charity ones do, and it comes out that they had the offices get shut down, and then it draws attention to it, and then they'll sever ties, like Special Olympics did, I think, after the Guardian expose. So if it becomes a thing where they start getting more criticized, maybe they do. If it becomes unprofitable, if the business for whatever reason crumbles, I don't know if that's possible. It seems so to have thrived over generations now. So
it's always good to, because honestly, sometimes I feel like, and I know this isn't true, I think this is just a character flaw on my part, but sometimes I feel like I'm the only person trying to bring awareness to the problem that is Smart Circle, Sidcore, Credico. It was so wonderful to hear things that I've been told by other people affirmed in your material, in your podcast. Because, you know, it could, all these people that contact me for interviews, you know, they could be lying, they could be making stuff up. But when you hear it from other people, like in your interview with Chase, like you said, he was an owner for 3.5 years. Owner is what you strive to be in the slave circle. And he himself talked about being good at the psychology, how to motivate and how to get people to do things, but they, whoever they are, train you as an owner to live a lie and be miserable and be unhappy and to lie about how successful and happy you are, to trick other people into doing it. And if you can trick other people into doing it, then you can be successful in this business, which is asinine to me, when you think about, you know, what quote unquote a normal business, how they operate. But
again, if they put that in the job interview,
yeah,
or in the job ad, okay, great, yeah, that's what it is. Cool, I know. But they go to extraordinary lengths to convince you that they're doing something else.
mm-hmm.
They won't tell you what they're doing, but they're doing something else. Not this horrible thing you think. You know?
Yep. Now, you ended your podcast sounding very optimistic. Now, I personally feel like there's no hope. I am a chronic pessimist by nature. That could just be me, another character flaw. But is there? Do you think that there's hope for this?
I don't know. I mean, who knows what the future of the business is? Did you see that Smart Circle recently posted a video? I mean, recently, it's been the last 6 months since COVID, about the future of the business. And like, it acknowledges, wow, shit's really hard right now, but like, shit's been hard before. And we come back stronger and we come back better. So I think shit was dealt a big blow with COVID and the retail stuff. I think the long-term threat to the business is stuff like your channel and like Juicy Rhino, is just like knowledge about it for people. Yeah. So like, if you go in, you see the job ad and you want to know what the fuck it is, you can find an answer. You go in for a job interview and it's like, what is this craziness? You can find an answer. It's out there. You can find an answer. It's not, you don't have to be like, well, they're telling me this is what it is, I guess I don't have to go with it because I can't, you know what I mean? So like, I think that's the big, the long-term medicine that's going to cure that illness is just some good quality information out there.
Yeah.
Like Chase said, you know, like none of these owners of these 9 businesses that opened in and around this Chattanooga area in that year and a half, none of them knew how many had failed. They went to all these opportunity meetings for hours and hours and hours a day, thousands of hours over the years, and they failed to mention, oh, by the way, 100% of the other people who've come into your market have failed, like in the first year or two. But just so you know what I mean, they never mention it. So they have such like weaponized misinformation campaign that goes on from the moment you see the job ad until the moment you walk away from them, that like, yeah, just having some quality information that maybe you get it when you're shitting at the Costco after you have your hot dog and your Sprite, you know what I mean? And it's a meme, but like, it's out there if you want it.
Yeah.
By the way, they used to use I won't brag about Juicy Rhino for a second. They used to use their hashtags like Smart Circle a lot. They used to use Sidcore and Credico for all their fancy award galas and stuff, and like keys to success and all those meetings, the top leaders meeting. Oh, here we are in Newport Beach, glamorous Newport Beach, California. Wow, at a corporate office suite. But now they can't use those anymore. They don't use them anymore because of all my memes. Because now if you use them, like you can't hashtag your cool event with Sidcore without seeing hundreds of memes.
That's awesome. That is great. Yeah, I think the fact that the truth has finally infiltrated into their world is I know we've had an effect, because I know for a fact that people have quit, or they have not gone to interviews because they've found either Juicy Rhino or they found the Slave Circle or Devil Corp. And it always amazes me how, you know, like you said, you get a moment, and like people I've interviewed have said, you know, they were, you know, just laying in their bed one day and just did some research, and they fell down the rabbit hole, first Devil Corp, then Slave Circle, and then they're just sitting there like, what did I get into? Yeah. And then the facade crumbles, right? At that point, it's like, oh my God. So I would agree. I think that the knowledge is out there, you know, and it warms my heart that when you go to YouTube and you put in Smart Circle, the first video that pops up is my Smart Circle entrepreneurship live, and then right underneath that is their propaganda video, which I think might have like 8,000 views or something like that, and then right under that is mine with 500,000 views, the Slave Circle film. So yeah, and I think with anything, you wish people would do the research and do the legwork first, right? And not just dive wholeheartedly into something. Now, you are still actively creating content on the Instagram page, the Juicy Rhino Instagram, with your memes. Do you have any plans for future podcast episodes or anything beyond the memes?
I've been pretty lazy with memes lately. Holidays, obviously, the chaos in the world. So I want to keep doing that because that's so fun. But as far as the podcast, I don't really feel like I need to. I feel like it reached the end of a story. You know, I want to find out what's happening in my hometown. Whatever the fuck's happening in London or in Pakistan or in Peru with their offices, like, great, terrific. But like, I'm going to find out, focus on what happens here. And I feel like I answered that question and I'm satisfied with my answers. But never say never, because what I think would be really cool is like, I still follow these people who ran these offices after it's, you know, and like one by one, 6 months, a year. Not all of them, but most of them have fallen away from the business now, you know, and I'd like to catch up with them and get their experiences. Like, be like, well, okay, you know, whether or not it's a podcast, I don't know, even just for my own curiosity, be like, hey, you remember me?
Yeah.
I come into your office and just be like, hey, can I ask you about your business? And you'd be like, no. Can we talk about it now? So like, maybe that would be interesting, is like 5 years later, catch up with people when there's enough distance that they might be able to like have perspective and answer that question I asked them, is this a cult? They might have a better answer in 5 years. And I would like to know. So maybe be a podcast. Going back to your thing about getting information out there, another really great tool to get information out there, I think, about these businesses is Reddit. So if you go to your town's subreddit or your city's subreddit and just say, here's an explanation of the spam job ads posted by these companies, and list the companies in your city that post them, and then just put an explanation of what Smart Circle or the business is, put links to your videos, put links to Juicy Rhino, because that shit is hilarious, and Luke St. Germain's book, and enough to substantiate it, and then share it in that subreddit, because one, it's Googleable. When someone Googles the name of that business in your city, in that city, they're going to find it. But two, there will be so many replies from other people in your community. They're like, oh, fuck, I worked for this thing, or I went in, this is a scam. And it'll totally legitimize what you posted. So it doesn't seem like a crazy conspiracy theory, because suddenly 50 other people in your city are like, I knew exactly. And they'll be like, oh, I fell for this 5 years ago. I fell for this 10 years ago. So I really think that's a really great way, and they can't take it down. That's a big one. They can't like flag it and have it removed. So the best they can do is have fake people register fake accounts and be like, I'm doing so well. It's a great company and perfect opportunity. You must have just been a failure.
Yep. and with knowledge, I think comes the fact that you can teach others, because I know that you at least have nieces and you know, a child who will grow up knowing the red flags and knowing what not to get involved with, right?
Oh no, but my kid's gonna naturally rebel against his dad.
Oh no,
Dad, I'm gonna be a CEO of my own marketing company.
Oh, and then 5 years later, when they're broke and living on the streets, they'll come crawling back to you and have to admit that you were right about everything.
All right, at that point, I'm gonna have to do more podcast episodes. I thought about it. You know, one thing I do want, and it's not a long topic, it's just funny. We're talking about things that they sell to the owners.
Yeah.
So on my Juicy Rhino feed, when I scroll through, I'll be like, every office has these big gold letters right now, inflatable balloon letters that spell out things. I'll bet they bought like 1 million different gold balloon letters and they're reselling them to their offices. It's just not a coincidence that everybody got the same fucking balloon letters that month. So like, I don't know. Now I look at it and I'm like, what are the things that they're reselling to this office? You know, I don't know. The gold balloon letters. Look into that conspiracy next.
That might be, hey, anything like any patterns you see amongst the offices. Yeah, there has to
Yeah.
be something shady going
Whatever,
on.
gold balloon letters. Now you're gonna be like, all right, well, I'm gonna edit that out. We'll end on the high note of whatever. All right. But dude, it was
Um,
great talking to you. It was awesome getting to chat about all this
oh,
stuff.
this has been fun, man. Yes, and I want to again. Sometimes it feels like a lonely effort.
Uh,
Thank you so much for all you do. You have recognized, and I know it was just because your wife asked you to do a little bit of research, and this whole thing,
it
this
went
whole
really well.
entity came from it, right? And I know you said like she's gotten on your case too about being kind of, with the
Yeah,
blinders on, just
totally.
keeping going with it.
She's
But
like, I know I asked you to look into this, but like, I'm done. I'm satisfied. Stop now, please.
I really do believe that this is something that that we're on the right side of history, right? This is something that at least I think a majority of people, if they knew about it, would say, yeah, these guys are doing something good, it's for at least the greater good. And you've done an excellent job. Thank you
Oh,
for that.
thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Oh, huge fan. Huge fan. Can't
Thank
wait.
you.